Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in today. Today I wanted to kind of go over a guide to help everyone hit a little bit harder on the battlefield. And so I'm going to be focusing on KVK field fighting and Battle of Ruins field fighting. So this is going to be out in the field. It's not going to be in the arena or anything like that, or any of the events that you try and hit for points. This is going to be strictly for field fighting. I'm going to try and go over all the Pikeman hero combinations because I know that we're all at different stages in the game, and maybe you're only in season 2 and you don't want to have access to these higher season heroes. And so I'm going to try and go over all the different hero combinations. So hopefully you enjoy the video and can stay along, because I'm going to try and touch a little bit of everything. So no matter what setup you're using, you can be as efficient as possible out there on the battlefield. So starting off first, I'm going to start with just one Pikeman March. Let's say you only have one Pikeman March to use. I know a lot of you might be to the point where you're looking at using 2 different Pikeman Marches out in the field, but your first combination that I would recommend is going to be Roski and Rolfie. The reason that I'm going to recommend this is that is going to be your maximum counterattack damage hero combination that you can use. So if you're going into the killing fields, or maybe you're getting low on troops and you're just wanting to use one march over and over again, this is going to be the march that you want to use. And so counterattack damage is great on these 2 heroes because of their basic talents. So when you go into the skills, you want to try and boost counterattack damage as much as you can. And so because I wasn't really using a second Pikeman March too much, I actually had this Season X Deadly Counterattack skill on here. If you don't have this skill, I would highly recommend swapping it out with the Halo of Thorns, because you're not going for normal attack on this hero setup. You're going to try and be boosting your counterattack damage. So try and boost counterattack damage as much as you can between these 2 heroes. So what that means is you're going to want to use Shield Reflector, Divine Shield, because Divine Shield is the best skill in the game as of right now. If you do have this new Season X skill that came out, I would highly recommend throwing that on there. I'm trying it out, seeing if it works well, because it does inflict Broken Blade, which a lot of these Pikeman heroes benefit off of. So Shield Reflector, if you don't have this Season X skill, just try and find something else that is really good for Pikeman. So another great one is Divine Blessing. If you're thinking that the fight you're going to be in, it's going to be less than 30 seconds, because obviously once you go over 30, then this skill doesn't become that good anymore. So if you're going quick field fighting, definitely you want to have this one on there as well. So that's just one Pikeman March. That's Roski Rolfie. That goes for counterattack damage. If you don't have Rolfie upgraded all the way, you need Roski. That's kind of the must in this version of the game that we're in. So I would pair Roski up with Laird until you have Rolfie at least to this talent, until you get him up to that 6-star. Then you can start to utilize him over Laird. But if you're looking for a counterattack combination, Roski Laird is the way to go until you get Rolfie. If you're not looking for counterattack damage and you're kind of just looking for a tanky setup, Roski Helgar is going to be your move, because Helgar does more healing than Yvette does. And she also stacks judgments in her talents. So you want to pair her up with Roski for these judgment marks. And so that's going to give you a real tank-like. It's going to do more normal attack damage on the field. But I would highly recommend, if you are to the point where you are trying to get 2 different Pikeman Marches, I would have one for counterattack damage. You're going to want to set your mounts up very defensively, because you're going for counterattack damage, so you're assuming that lots of people are going to be hitting you. So set those 2 up with defense, and then go to your second set. And now that we're going to talk about a second Pikeman March, I want to talk about Helgar and probably Laird. That's going to be your next combination. If you're going to use these 2 for your first one, I would match these 2 up for your second. Let's say you're looking to do something a little different. I would utilize Helgar and Leif, just because Leif does more healing than Yvette does, but he also stacks judgment marks. No, sorry. He gains an immunity to Broken Blade. And so all of the Pikeman Marches out there are constantly trying to inflict Broken Blade on the target. And so this is a good one to have. But to hit harder for a second Pikeman March would be Helgar and Laird. I would probably try and set these 2 up to be very attack focused. just because if you're going to go into counterattack boosting, you want to be defensive, and so you're probably going to want to maximize attack on these two. So that's Pikeman marches in a nutshell. Laird and Yvette is also a very great choice if you're only in Season 1. Once you hit Season 2, you want to start using Heldar and Laird together. Heldar is so much better than Yvette is. But if you don't have Heldar yet, use Laird and Yvette and set it up like a tank Pikeman march. So again, if you have Divine Shield, use that. You probably wouldn't use Halo of Thorns in this. You want to use Deadly Counterattack, Divine Shield, Resting Counterattack. You'll probably be using Shield Reflector on your first one. Shield Attacker isn't bad because you're going to be shielded a lot, so it's definitely an okay one to use. Divine Shield, wherever that is, Divine Blessing. Hymn of Life, you want to use on your healing Pikeman March, okay? If you're going to boost counterattack damage, you want to try and boost it as much as possible. You don't want to try and split these things up. So have one Pikeman March that's going to boost counterattack and have one that's either going to be boosted through being shielded or through healing. Like we all know, if you pair Yvette up and Leif and you just absolutely boost defense out of it, it's never going to die. But you're also not going to do a lot of damage if you pair these two up. So I hope that helps. I think that's pretty much all the Pikeman combinations that you can use. If you're going to have two Pikeman marches, I think you're going to want to set one up to be a counterattack march and have the other one be set up to be more of a tank march and generate a lot of healing while boosting the normal attack as well, because you're going to try and get a lot of counterattack up here. So that's Pikeman marches. We're going to roll into archers next. So we just had the Season X archer heroes come out first, so I'm going to talk about them. These two heroes, they boost poison damage, okay? So poison and burning damage on Elf, but in these two heroes, you're definitely going to want to boost the poison aspect more so than the burning, okay? So poison damage does a lot more damage than burning does. So you want to try and boost poison as much as possible with a lot of these newer skills. So like we just finished KVK4, so we have this Venom aggregation. I'm definitely going to use that, but what you need to pay attention to is this skill isn't going to do anything for the first 9 seconds. So if you're field fighting and you're just tapping people over and over and over again and you're never actually in battle for 9 seconds, this skill isn't going to do anything. So you want to try and swap that out for something else. So this skill is kind of the same way. Every 9 seconds, it's going to inflict poison on the target. And as you know, with a lot of these archer heroes, they do boost poison damage. It's almost always one of their first talent points here. And so you want to try and boost the poison damage. So now there are two different ways that you can set up an archer march. Typically, people only fight with one archer march just because they're always being targeted. So you want it to be really strong. And if it's anything less than that, it's just going to get wiped out on the battlefield. So whether you have these two Season X skills, heroes, my apologies, heroes, you want to be boosting that poison damage, or you want to focus on a rage build. So I'm not going to recommend using rage build for archers if you're going to use infantry as well. So like if you have a third march that's infantry, we'll talk about it in a second, but I think you should set that up for a rage build and keep poison to your archer heroes, because poison doesn't do anything for the infantry heroes, but it does for the archers. So you want to try and use poison skills for your archers and then try and make a rage build out of your infantry. But we'll get into infantry in a second. So try and utilize a lot of the poison skills that you could throw on any of these archer heroes because they all boost poison damage. Try and get as many of these poison skills on there as possible, and then go into some of the Season 1, Season 2 skills that either inflict burning or increase burning damage. So you want to try to increase poison damage first, and then you can go back through and use something like Hera's Curse to try and boost burning damage. So that's what you want to use on archers. I'm not going to go into it too crazy detailed. Obviously, for mounts, for archers, I would highly recommend focusing on attack, because if you focus on attack, it's going to benefit you in a lot of the events that the game hosts on, like clearing dangers, where you're attacking the monsters in here and you're trying to do as much damage as possible. Typically, you're going to want to use archers. And when you're on the battlefield, you're not looking for your archers to be your tank. You're looking for them to do as much damage as possible. So I would recommend going full attack. If you aren't full attack, I would say that's totally fine. Your safest bet for mounts is always to do 1 offense, 1 defense, right? So that way you can at least be balanced. And that's what I did, because I know that I don't have the budget to max out 10 different sets of mounts for whatever combination I want to use. So your safest bet is always to split them up. If you want to pick one, go with attack for archers. If you're noticing that in KVK you're always having your archers targeted, maybe you want to switch them to a defense and just absolutely stack defense on your archers, so when they're hit, people just aren't expecting them to not die. You know what I mean? So that's archers in a nutshell. You can kind of organize it however you want to organize it, but definitely just remember to boost poison over burning. That's kind of the golden rule of thumb when it comes to these archer heroes, unless you're going to get into Ardor and Verdani. If you're a little newer in the game and you only have these 2 archer heroes unlocked, like you haven't gotten into season 1 or especially season 3 and 2 when you get Lagertha and Margit, then you would probably want to focus a lot of this on the burning skills, right? Like Hera's Curse, Fiery Detonation, those type of skills, just to boost the burning talents that these have. But that's archers in a nutshell. Boost poison. Unless you don't have poison heroes, then try and boost burning. But now we're going to dive into infantry. We'll kind of start with the older ones and move to the newer ones. So older, let's say you're in season 1, you really only have gens. Maybe you probably have Gregory by now, Hobart as well. So obviously your first matchup is going to be Gregory and gens. Try and boost the basic attack damage a lot on these. I would turn these into your rage build as well. I like to have, if we're only talking about having 1 infantry march, that's going to be my rage build. And that's where I'm going to use Margit and Lagertha. And what do I mean by a rage build? I mean, every skill that you want to use is either going to be focused towards building rage. First strike is the best skill to do that. Or you're going to inflict damage anytime a rage skill is casted. Because if I'm going to be striving to continuously inflict my active skill damage, then I can also benefit off of every time it's casted, right? So you're kind of like double dipping on the rage build. So first strike, and rage, that's your other one. Those are the 2 that recover rage until you hit this Season X skill after KVK 4. This one does have a chance to recover rage as well, so that's why I'm using it on my infantry now. And then Odin's Asylum, just because every time an active skill is going to go off, which I'm trying to have it go off a lot, I'm also going to deal an additional direct damage. So that's a rage build. That's pretty much the only skills you'll use for a rage build. It doesn't matter what heroes you use them on. Well, that's a lie, because you want to try and use them on heroes that have a good active skill damage. So that's why you usually do them with archers or with infantry. But because all the archers are focused towards poison or burn damage, I like to try and save my rage skills for infantry. So this is with 1 infantry march. Your best march is going to be Lagertha and Margit, because they are purely rage heroes who want to try and continuously have these skills be inflicted, because they do a lot of damage factor. So that's a rage build for infantry. Whether you use it on your infantry or archers is totally up to you. But the other setup that you can use for infantry is boosting typically the slowness or the silence that you get with Herald and Rollo. So that's kind of going to be your next setup. So if I'm using currently, I think I'm using Herald and Bjorn. That's going to be my slowness heroes, but the best matchup is going to be Rollo and Herald. Just because Rollo has a lot of great talents that increase basic attack damage when they're using an active skill. It inflicts them with slow. And then also this one up here is pretty good. But basically, let's see, inflicting with bleed, counterattack damage, basic attack. Rollo and Herald are going to be your 2 to try and inflict slowness on, to benefit off of these basic talents. So what do I mean by that? I mean Trap of Despair. I mean Silencer. Let me go back to Bjorn, Bloodstained Icefield, and the Silent Invasion. So there's not a lot of Season 1 and below skills that boost silence or slowness. And so like if it's not slowed, it'll cause it with bleed, which ties in with your infantry hero. So it's a really good 5th march to have. If you're going to have a 2nd infantry march on the field, you want to try and be boosting slowness or silence based on the heroes you're going to use. Unless you're going to use something like Gregory and Hobart, these 2 heroes greatly boost basic attack damage. You're going to want to use skills that boost basic attack damage as well. And yeah, I think that's pretty much infantry heroes. Essentially, infantry heroes are split up into 2 categories. Why it's 3? You're going to have your rage build, which is only going to be Lagertha and Margit. And then you're going to have your slowness and silence build, which is going to be Harold, Bjorn, and Rollo. And then you have your basic attack damage infantry heroes, and that's going to be Jens, Hobart, Gregory, and Bjorn a little bit. Bjorn's really good with his active skill damage, so a damage factor of 1700, and then it's also slows them. So he's a great hero to usually boost off of the slowness effect rather than the basic attack damage effect that he gets in his talents over here. But yeah, infantry, you can kind of do whatever you want to do with the mounts. If you're going to do a rage build, I would highly recommend going full attack on it, just because that's going to boost the active skill damage that you're going to use a lot. And so I would go full attack on your rage build heroes. And then once you get into your offhand infantry heroes that are kind of boosting the slowness or the silence effect, I would try and focus on defense a lot more, just because that is going to be your 5th march. So it's going to be a little weaker and it's going to be targeted a lot more. So you want to try and focus on defense. But as always, the safest bet is to make 1 attack and 1 defense mount for every hero set. So that way you're at least balanced no matter what you do. So that's Pikeman, archers, and infantry heroes in a nutshell. I know that I'm not the best presenter, but I appreciate everyone that stuck out the whole video. I hope it helps you in your next fight. If you got any questions, feel free to let me know down below. I think I pretty much covered everything, but I think, there's always a chance I could have missed something. So as a quick review, Pikeman heroes, if you got 1 march, I would highly recommend it's going to be Rolfi and Roski. If not, you can use Rolfi and Helgar. And if you don't have Roski yet, Helgar and Laird is going to be your next combination. And then if you don't have Helgar, it's going to be Laird and Yvette. If you're going to use 2 Pikeman marches, these 2 are going to be your first one. 2nd march, I would focus on healing and or shield boosting skills, because you'll want to probably use Helgar and Laird. You can also use Leif as well. He is not bad at all, but he needs to be paired up with a hero that's actually going to do some damage. Archer heroes, just boost the poison as much as you can. Unless you're not going to use an infantry march, then make a rage build out of them, like we talked about a little bit earlier. Unless you're in Season 1, then you want to try and boost burning with these 2 heroes until you unlock Yolmi. But once you unlock Yolmi, as you can see, he's a poison damage focused hero, and from there on out, they're all going to be poison focused. So you want to start trying to accumulate these Season 2, 3, and 4 skills that boost poison damage. And then when it comes to infantry, if you only have 1, this is going to be your bread and butter of infantry marches. It's one of the strongest marches that is in my server today. Is going to be your rage build infantry march, just because you're continuously trying to recoup so much rage that you're always inflicting these active skill damage. And so it really shreds on the battlefield. If you're going to use 2 infantry marches, or you don't have both of these, then you want to target slowness and silencing effects for your skills. And you want to utilize heroes such as Harold, Bjorn. Gregory's going to be more of a basic attack damage combination. You kind of can just play around with it and see what you like. Rollo is going to be a must when it comes to boosting your silence and slowness effects. Just read the talents and boost whatever talents these guys affect. You want to try and stack these percentages. You don't want to try and space things out. Like if you're going to have a rage build, you need to commit to it 100%. You don't want to set one hero up as a rage build and the other one up as a silence build and then try and put them together. You're better off just stacking the singular effect. So yeah, that's field fighting. I didn't talk about Nea. Nea is very similar to Helgar. Okay, Nea is very similar to Helgar. She's a healing boosting hero. And so if you are just deciding what Season X hero to push, if you can't push both of them, I would pick Wolfie 100% of the time. But if you can get both of them, then this will be your first matchup, and your second matchup will probably be Helgar and Nea. So unless you want to keep it old school, you can use Heldar and Roski, and then your other matchup will be Rolfi and Nea. Both are equally as strong because you're splitting up the stronger and weaker heroes just in the same way. So if you got any questions, feel free to let me know down below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.